Hi everyone, it's Nat here. Hope you're all doing well. So I'm at my kitchen bench. I've come on to show you how I make paper with the paper that comes off of your stamps when you soak them off the envelopes and paper pieces. I did show in a previous bit and piece video that I had made paper from the wads of soaked paper that I got off of these, and I said I would show how I did it, so I'm going to do that. Now this is my second attempt at this. I did show this part before and then realised that I hadn't filmed it, so I thought I'd better get on before it gets dark and show you again. So I used about 1/3 of this pack to make all the paper that I did before. And I have just done another 1/3, and I've got all of the stamps drying and all the paper ready to go. So I thought I'd do one more lot with you guys just to show you how I take the stamps off. So in this red tub here, it's just a microwave dish, I have got some warm water. Now it's just tap water. It is not lukewarm, it's a bit warmer than that, but I wouldn't call it hot. So I'm not sure how they take stamps off the paper these days, but I'm not collecting them, I'm just using them for craft, so I'm not caring about being too careful or anything. And this is the way we used to do it when I was young. So I'm just grabbing a pile of these stamps. Now you've got to be wary when you're doing this. If you've got some stamps on coloured backgrounds like blue, red and that the stamp, that the colour could run and stain your stamps and other papers, so just be wary of that. I did have some blue paper in my last lot, but it didn't run, so it didn't really matter. And it might have helped make my papers the nice blue colour that they turned out, which I really liked. So I tend to put these face down in the water, just because when the stamps soak off, they sink to the bottom that way, which I like. It's just the way I like doing it. I tend to do them like this rather than sticking a whole big pile in. Just keeps them a bit more separated when you go to pull the stamps off and helps them soak a bit better. So I tend to put a layer in and then I get my skewer and just press them down. Some of them will turn over and be face up, and that's alright, doesn't really matter. I just like to get them a bit wet. Some of them will sink down and that. Now I'm using my old camera setup, so it's just a camera that is on a tripod here. So the sound is really good on it, so I'll try not to shout, but the picture quality won't be as good. And my lighting out here is a bit suspect too, so I apologise for that. Especially when it gets darker and we're up to the paper making, the lighting won't be so good. But I can't be bothered dragging out all my LED lights, and then I have to move the computer over to hook them up to and all that sort of stuff. So, that one's ready to go. So it's New Year's Eve here. It's a nice warm night, which is just what you want for New Year's in Australia. It's been 31 today, which is beautiful. So it should be an awesome evening for those who are celebrating. This is my style of celebration, although I did buy some Magnum Lux Caramel crackable ice cream and some sushi. That's going to be my tea. Having a nice quiet one. I just dropped my son off at his mate's place. So I get the house to myself, which is nice. So I just keep shoving stamps in. You can put as many in it as you want, really. I tend not to fill it up completely because they can just all wad together and not soak very well, but I might as well stick a fair few in and do them. The first time I did this, I did 2 lots like this, and that made the 11 pieces that I showed. So today it looks like I'll be working with 3 lots like this. Now you can see I've got some of the manila envelopes, just some regular envelope. There's some postcard pieces. When I go to take the stamps off of the paper, I have been sorting the postcard and thicker pieces out because I won't use the postcard bits, but I'll use all the thinner paper bits. The postcard bits are a bit thick. We want to get a nice fine pulp. So I think just get the rest of this pile in, and I think that'll do. Now what I do is let these soak for at least about 15 minutes. 15 minutes to half an hour, something like that is plenty. So now I have waited, I don't know, 25 minutes or something. So you'll find with the older stamps, like the Queen's heads and that they'll just slip off the paper. Or they would have fallen off and just sunk to the bottom of your tray here. So what I do is just put them face down on the towel. I do them face down because if there's a bit of glue residue on any of the stamps, I don't want it sticking to the towel and picking up fluff and stuff. And then with the residual paper, I just put it down and I just stuck them all in a big messy wet wad of paper. That we will get back to later. So I just continue doing that, and we'll see there's another old one that we can just slip off. So they're real easy and fun to take off. It's the new ones that are problematic. Now this is an old one, so that just peels off quite easy. Now let's find a newer one. That's an old one. So if you're finding that they're still sticking a bit too much, like even the older ones, then you're just going to have to let them soak for a bit longer. So this is an old one. Sometimes they just need a bit of encouragement. And because we're not collecting these, I don't mind if they're not perfect. Like if there's a little bit of paper residue left, or we rip them a little bit, who cares? You know, it's for our crafting, so... Alright, let's try and find newer ones. I've got stacks of new ones. There's a bit of an old one that's just floating around. There's some paper. So this one's a bit of a newer one, and you'll see it's not just falling off. So I tend to just lift the corner a bit, and you can see the... I don't know if you can see, but there's the glue that's there on the paper. So I just go careful and try and remove the... I just go around the edges pretty well and prise it off the glue. And you'll see the glue's left on the paper. And that's why when I pulp the paper, it has all the glue in it as well. And I think it was the glue that was rising to the top, which we'll see later probably. But it didn't seem to make a problem with the paper. If anything, it possibly helped it. So... Now it's those newer stamps that can stick and become a problem to get off. So I've got a whole lot of old ones here. Now you might be able to see with this one, the glue's sort of peeling up with it. So I try and find a bubble where the glue's sort of broken off and peel it away. It's quite fun, this process, but it's a lot of work because there's a lot of stamps. It doesn't look like a lot, but I stood here doing this the other day and ended up with a really sore back, so I'll probably get a chair to kneel on in a minute while I finish doing this. I'm not sure what process they use to remove them for stamp collecting now, whether they steam them off or they still soak them or what, but so this is how we used to do it in the olden days. So I will continue doing this, and as I said, I do this about 2 times and I fill up this whole towel with stamps to dry. And they don't take long to dry in this weather, a couple of hours. So I'm at my kitchen table now and I've got a towel down, one of my tea dyeing towels, just to protect my table, which is a mess anyway, so it really doesn't need protection, but we'll be getting it pretty wet afterwards. So here's my plate with all my stamp backings in, which look pretty messy at the moment. So they're still quite wet and all sticking together. So what I do now is just rip them into smaller pieces. Don't have to be too fussy, but it'll just help, I suppose, with the pulping process. And I've got hot water in here now. Not boiling, just hot. It doesn't matter, I suppose. It could be boiling if you want it to. We're just going to leave these to soak in here for a few hours. The instructions tend to say overnight is best. A few hours or overnight is best, but I only did it for a few hours last time and it was fine. So, but these are quite wet and have been sitting there getting all soggy as it is. And because we're breaking them down, and I assume it depends on your blender and that as well, and the type of paper that you're using. So just rip them all into smaller pieces, put them in here, give them a bit of a mix just to separate the bits that are sort of stuck together. And yeah, leave them sit for a while. Okay, so that's that job done. You can feel it softening up real nicely in that hot water now that we've ripped it up like that. So just give it a bit of a stir around just to separate the bits and pieces. And we'll let that sit for a couple of hours. All mushy. And then we'll come back and we'll do the blending. Okay, so we're up to the blending process now to make the pulp. So I don't know how much of this you're going to see and it's pretty dark, but I have this big tub here. It's just a big Kmart plastic tub. You need a pretty big tub to put your pulp in once you've made it, because you're going to add a whole heap of water to it afterwards. And then it has to be big enough for you to put your mould and decal in to make your paper, which I'll show you afterwards, and then you'll understand what I mean if you don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm putting that to the side, and that's where I'll be tipping my goo, my pulp in once I have blended it. So we've got pulp that's been sitting there, and my blender is here. Now this blender I have picked up for $15 from the second-hand store, and it seems to work really, really well. I have a measuring cup here, not to measure with, but I just find it sort of easy to use. So the instructions in my paper making kit did sort of say how much to use, but I sort of just wing it anyway. I tend to just grab a nice bit of pulp with a bit of water. And I'll get some more pulp and water. You want to make sure there's plenty of water to mix up the pulp. And you don't want to overfill your blender. So we've got a fair bit of pulp there, so I might add a bit more water if I can. Might have to grab an extra bit of water. Just fill up my cup. There. I'll put the lid on. Now it's going to be a bit noisy. So what I tend to do, I'm not very good with this mechanical stuff because it scares me, so I don't use it very often. But I tend to pulse for a bit and then put it onto 1 for a bit, and then put it onto 2 for a bit, and then back to 1, and then pulse, and then repeat. And then that seemed to do quite well. It does send the instructions to blend for like 5 minutes. That seemed to me to be quite unnecessary. So I will do that. So that's the first round, and that's looking pretty mushy. So I like pulsing it in between just to hopefully grab any of the big bits that I didn't manage to get before. And that's basically all I do. I figure if that's not enough, I will. So you can see in there, it just looks like some weird drink. So then I tip that. Don't know if you'll see any of this. Tip this into my big bin. And it looks disgusting. Looks like something that should be in the sewage. So I'm just going to basically keep doing that. Now, I don't think there's enough water in here because we've got a fair bit of the paper. So I'll do what I did before and add, you know, a bit of the pulp and then go and add a little bit extra water just so I don't burn out the blender. And I'll continue doing that until we've got it all ready to go. Okay, so you can see now I've got all my pulp sitting in the bin. So what we want to do now is just add water, and we want to get this to about 10 centimetres. That just makes it easier and gives us enough depth to put our mould and decal in to pick up the pulp and stuff. So what I do is I have my blender here which still has some of the pulp in there and that. So I will rinse that with water. We'll get some water in that to rinse out those bits and pieces and use that water to fill up my tub. So I'll just run back and forth to the sink a few times with this. So I just want to show you the pieces that I got in my paper making kit. So it came in this box and I got this one from a second-hand shop. And I'm so sorry about the shadows. It's that turn of the night. Usually I'd sit around the other side of the table, but I can't because I've pushed it up against the cupboards. So you're stuck with the shadows. So in there's a sponge. So paper making kits are great. I got this one for about $8, which is really cheap. But this is all stuff that you can get elsewhere or make yourself quite easily as well. So sponge, you can get them everywhere. Your mould and decal. Now I've seen these being made with photo frames, like big photo frames, and your window wire fly screen, or just with making yourself a frame with some cheap wood and fly screen, and then you just use the same wood to make your, I suppose this is the decal and that's the mould, something like that anyway, or the other way around, I don't know. And that just sits on there. So they've drilled some holes in here and put some screws in there so you can sit that on top like that. So this is what we'll put in the water to pick up the pulp, and the paper forms in there. Then we've got some smooth non-porous boards. I've got 2 of those. So we'll be using them to put our papers in between, and then we'll weight them down to squish them all. And then it says there were chucks cloth in there, so I don't know if these were the chucks or what, but it looks like calico to me. I'm pretty sure you can use linen and stuff as well, because I did buy a linen sheet to do this with, because I didn't know these were in the kit because I didn't have a look. So, but I've got extra linen if I need. So let's get making some paper, I suppose. Now this time I've also grabbed some food colouring. I thought I might try putting some food colouring in this lot and make it like pink or red, because I've got some red food colouring to give a go. Okay, so let's get some food colouring into this. So I'll just do a couple of drops. I don't want too much colour in there, I don't think. Maybe 3? I don't know. Don't use this stuff much either. That is definitely imparting a bit of colour. A little bit more. Maybe another 3. Oops, that was 4. Okay, Okay, I think we'll leave it like that and see what happens. It's a bit murky, but I'd rather murky than a real bright red. So give it a good stir around. Okay, now we'll get our things set up. So we have our mould and decal, and so I'm going to put this downwards in and then bring it up like that under all the pulp so that it picks up the pulp in this part here. And as I'm lifting it up through the water, I'll gently sort of put it from side to side so that the pulp spreads out evenly over the mesh there. So we'll give that a go. Usually I give it a bit of a stir before I do this, just so the particles are all moving around a bit. And I've got to hold the bits together so they don't come apart while I'm doing this. So just go side to side. Now this should be quite sort of thick, this piece. Probably a bit too thick. What you can do if it's not looking right is just put it back in there. Go from side to side. Looks like the colour hasn't gone the whole way through either, but that's alright. And I'll bring it up. It's quite thick, this lot. Oh, there's not much colour in it. Looking at that. Just debating whether I want to put a bit more in there. Looks pink in there. I don't think the colours had time to sort of set in. Maybe I should try a bit more. Let's just try a couple more drops. Have some pretty thick pieces to begin with. You just bring it up like that and you can see how it's all covered there. That looks pretty thick and lumpy, but it will thin out as we go further, so just letting it drain off over the top as much as I can. And then I'm going to put it down next to me over here, and I'll move you guys over. Okay, so now what we do is take the top part off. We've got our paper there. This one's a bit of a mess really, but it's very thick. Hang on, is this what we do? Yeah. And then we want to transfer this over to that, so we've got to do the flippy. So you just get it like that. Go over like that. Now what I've done is put a piece of the calico or chucks or whatever onto our smooth board underneath the paper that we've just flipped over, and then you grab your sponge and you just press it on there to get the excess water out of your paper, and I'll put the excess water back into our tub. And you just continue doing that to get as much out as you sort of can. Just press it down. Let's go around the edges. So as I said, I put a piece of the material on top of our board first, and then you flip the paper over onto that. Now, the first one is the hardest one to separate, and then after that they're really easy. So then you've got to lift your mould piece off. Now that's come off pretty easy. I'll just straighten that out a bit, and that's our paper there. So what you want to do is grab another piece of material and put it on top, and we're just going to keep sandwiching it like that. Now what I wanted to do was add something to it, so we'll do that with the next one. So we'll get our mould and decal ready again for the next piece, and we'll go back over to our tub. That might do. And we'll go in for another dive. I won't bother mixing it because it is quite thick, so we'll see if we can get a good scoop just doing this. Yep. Let's get my finger in there. Gotta hold it, but not so that my finger goes into the paper. Hang on, make my matzo of this. Going for another scoop. Again, just let it drain. You can see there's some biggish bits in there, so I probably could have blended it a bit better. There's lots of white specks. It's hard to know how much of that is the glue in that, but it gives it that sort of eggshell look when it's dry, and the last lot I made turned out really good. So I suppose you don't know it until you've done it. It's not really taken up much of the colour though, which is interesting, so maybe you've got to put a fair bit more in, but that's alright, you learn through experimentation. So again, I'll put this one down next to me. Move yours over again. Take the top off. Do the tipsy. And sponge the excess water out. Okay, so we'll take the top off. There's our paper. Now, at this stage, I'm pretty sure it's at this stage, I hope so, you can add bits and pieces if you want to add petals or glitter or whatever to your paper. So I thought I'd try some thread. Don't know how it's going to work. You can do imprints and that as well, but I thought I'd just add some thread. It'd be a good way of using up some of those excess sewing threads that you have if it does work. So let's give it a go anyway. Now I don't want to put too many in. I thought we'd do red because we're going to have pinky red paper, but that's not happening. So, but that's alright because we're still getting the beautiful blue eggshell sort of look that I had in the other papers I did. That one's a bit thick. Maybe something like that. Okay. Alright, then again we put our top piece material on. And then we just continue sandwiching them up. So I'm going to keep going and I'll come back when I'm getting near the end of my pile. Okay, so I'm about halfway through the process now, and it's getting a little more consistent now that, you know, I've been using up a bit of the pulp. So what I've been doing is giving it a bit of a stir. Putting my mould in there. And as I bring it up, I just wriggle it from side to side, just gently, and that enables it to cover the base and gives us an even coating, so it's not quite as thick in that now. Okay, so I did run out of cloth and I cut myself some more. So I think my last few pieces of paper will probably have some wrinkles in them from my wrinkly cloth. But I found some calico that I had a whole pile of, so I just ripped some of that up and then I used my pink ink shears to go around the edges that were fraying. So the pass-through before this one was quite thin. Looked like I wasn't going to get a whole sheet out of it, so I thought it's time to stop there. So this is the last one that we're going to tip over and do our sponging. So I've got a good few sheets out of this lot. Doesn't look like any of the red food colouring did get into it, but that's alright. I'll have to practice. I think if I put more in, a whole lot more, and maybe even leave it to soak for a while in there, would be the go with that. But that's something I can worry about in the future. I do like the way it looks, just the colour it is anyway. Alright, so we'll take that off, and as you can see it's quite thin there and it's broken, it's stuck there. So now I'll be cleaning all this off. I rinse all my mould and decal and everything off when I've finished here. So the last thing we do is put our last piece of material on top, and then we get our other board, we put that on top. So yeah, you make sure your boards are smooth and non-porous, apparently. So, and then you want to weigh them down for a while. So I use a whole lot of books for that. If you've got a book press or something like that, that would work as well. But this is my flower press book. It's still got some ferns and that in there. So that's a nice heavy one. So I just use that and a couple other books, and that works quite well. Oh, sorry, bumping you around. So I'm just going to leave it being pressed like that for about half an hour or so. You could leave it a lot longer if you want, but yeah, I'll leave it like that for half an hour, go and have a bit of rest, and then we'll come back and we separate them and hang them up then. So I have removed my big book stack, and I'm going to take the top off of our sandwich here if I can. And would you believe it's 1 AM here on New Year's Day? So happy New Year, all you beautiful people. Okay, so we take our first bit of fabric off, just like that. Now this is the one that was really thin, so it's a bit ripped there, but I'm going to hang it anyway, and we'll see how it turns out, because I can still hopefully cut that broken bit off and use this piece or collage with it, or just chuck it back in for next time to make pulp with. So we will lift this piece off. So you just carefully peel the pieces off like that, and they should stick just like that, and we'll hang that up. So I have a hanger next to me that I'm going to peg these on, which I will show you afterwards. So bear with me while I do the pegging. And we'll continue doing this. Now there are different methods that people use to do all of this, but this is the method that I've seen that I liked the look of, because you know it's easy to do in a small area and mass make. You know, if you've got a number of hangers and that, you can make a fair few using this method, and you could sandwich as many as you want like this as well, really. Oh, ripping that one a bit, but that's alright. So I was surprised when I saw someone use this method that the paper pulp actually sticks to the material like this, so it's really handy. Go a bit slower. Oh, we've got one red thread in there. I don't know how that got in there, but that's all right. So that seems to be in there quite well, which is great. So it's nice and eggshell looking, isn't it? So I don't think I blended this lot quite as well as I did the first lot that I did the other day, but it still looks really cool with all the bits and pieces and flecks in there. I think a lot of those white bits are the glue, but that's alright. I did try writing on the stuff I did the other day and it worked really well, so hopefully this will be similar. Now you can see on that next piece that I actually put some of my dried ferns in there. Okay, so it looks like the batteries ran flat on my camera. Having fun using my old tech. So fortunately now I've been able to move back to my craft desk with my good lighting and my iPad. So here is the container full of all the stamps that I have dried now for this project. So later on I'm going to have fun sorting them all out and putting them into their containers. Now I did just want to make a note of telling you that I did use quite a bit of water to make my papers, and with the water that I used, that has actually been tipped out onto my native plants. They were all a bit thirsty in the weather that we're having here, so rather than tipping it down the sink, that has gone to water my native plants. So I have unpegged all of our sheets here, ready to go. So now we've got to remove our paper from our material. So this is quite fun, this part. Now I think the first ones I've got here are the thinner ones. So I basically just run my fingernail under and try and get the corner started. Now once you get it sort of started at one end, then you can just sort of pull it off quite easily. Hopefully. When it's thin like this, it can break further down because there might be some thin bits. So I'll just go a bit steady for these first few pieces. That's very satisfying though. So you can see there it's tearing a bit, but that doesn't matter. This is very, very thin. And there's our first piece of paper. A little hole in it there. There's a lovely colour too. So just put them to the side. This is a bit that has one red thread in it. It's a bit sturdier. Beautiful. So we'll pile them up on top of each other. That'll help keep them flat. And I'll do the same with our material, although I will wash the material this time. Ready for my next lot. So yes, apologies for the poor camera work and lighting previous. I will try and do another video on this in the future and try and manage with my iPad somehow. That will just take a fair bit of work, but I was in a hurry just to show you this, so I thought you wouldn't mind me doing it with my bad setup for starters. This one's a lot thicker. It's still beautiful. I mean, I've got a fair bit of homemade paper here, like bought bits and stuff like that, and it's a lot thicker than what I've made here even, so I'm quite happy with the way it's turned out. And it's very eggshell like, and you can see the little bits of manila envelope. There's a little bit of plastic in there, but it doesn't bother me. It's cut up quite nicely. Little bits of white and specks of blue, just all the different colours. Very, very nice looking. So I will have to work on experimenting at getting different colours into it in the future. Kind of do like this look though with these stamp bits. I think if I'm going to colour it, maybe I'd be better off just using my plain white scraps and then adding colour. This one got a bit wrinkled. This is the one that was the last one we did, I think. That was real thin, so it has a hole in it. So we'll see what we can get off of this. Might just end up all going back for pulp. But even little corner bits we can use for collaging. Bits like that. I can use that. Try and get the bulk of it off so that when I do the washing I don't have too much paper in it. Okay, I'll put all of that to the side, I think. And as I said, this you can throw back in when you're doing paper pulp next time and add that to it. This one's quite thin as well. Try and go down this side. I might grab my ruler. So that's a bit sharp, isn't it? Even the thin pieces, once you get them started, they're relatively easy to just pull off. So it goes to show how tough it is. Oop, that one's ripping. I think I was a lot more careful making them the first time around. When you're on camera, Everything goes wrong. That's all right though, I can trim that bit off. It's a nice thick one. It's got a few bubbles in it. I know at the start I was having trouble with getting it quite thick and bubbly. But that's still really nice. I might even try embossing some of that. It's another thicker one. This is more like egg carton thickness. It's nice and smooth on that side. Now this is the one with the cut up pieces of thread in. And look, I'm quite happy they've stuck quite well. I think if you messed around with them too much, they'd come off. Otherwise, they're sticking quite nicely. Really happy with that. So I'd say that one's a success. The next one I'm not so lucky with, which is my fern leaf one. Now, if I go like that, they stay on, but they have lifted. Yeah, there, so they've come off. But if you take them off, oh, that's lovely. So if, the imprint is there, which is really nice. So they haven't really adhered. But they've made their imprints, which is really, really nice. So I might practice a bit more with the imprints. What I think you could do is maybe sandwich them in between layers, possibly. So I might have to practice with that a bit. But the imprints are nice. I might put bigger fern leaves in next time, try and get bigger imprints. That'd look cool, and then you could ink them up. It's a bit like embossing. So it's not a complete failure. And then these are our long strands. And they look like they've adhered really nicely as well. So very, very happy with that, because I think that looks really cool. So I might have to make a whole set of those different colours. I think they're fun. So take that one off. So what you can do now, because the sides and that do curl up, is if you have a page press or a paper press or whatever, you could put that in there. Or like we did with the wet papers, you could sandwich these in between your boards and put some books on top and leave them overnight just to flatten them out. I'll probably just put these into a paper plastic slip and just stack them wherever I'm going to put my papers, because bit by bit then the weight of the papers will just flatten them out anyway. But I'd say that is a success. We've got some beautiful paper, different thicknesses, nice eggshell effect on them. I love that these thread ones have worked out really well, because it's a great way to use those recycled threads to make something beautiful. I'll show you up against just a white piece of paper so you can see the colour. I think they're gorgeous actually. Can't wait to start using them. So yeah, and how many did we get? Decent pages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That one's thick. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We'll say 14 if you evened out the thick with the thin. And that was pretty right, because the last time we got 11 and we didn't do quite as much. So that's the paper that we made from that lot of the stamp backings. And what a great way to use up those little bits that come off of the backs of your stamps. And I know one of my viewers mentioned she might keep some of her envelopes to do this with, and that is such a good idea, and I thought the same as well. I have so many junk mail envelopes that I've kept to make pockets and that with. If I don't make pockets with all of them, or even if I do, if I have off-cut bits and pieces and torn bits, I'll be keeping them now, and this is what I'll be doing with them. So I think that's a great way to use them, and I think they look awesome. So I hope you enjoyed that, guys. Give it a go yourselves. Hopefully you can find either a paper making kit or you can make yourself one. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.